My name is Nicole and I'm a first grade teacher, and I'm going into my 10th year of teaching. I teach in Vista Unified, and at the end of last year we were so stoked because we thought that we were closing this chapter. We were going to move on from all of this mess, and now we're finding out that this year is going to be exactly the same. They're talking about having our kids play in play zones and quarantining any kids that have any sort of symptoms. They're going to be testing. The masks, everything is looking exactly the same this year. Deep breaths.
Wow.
More parents and teachers need to get involved. They need to be okay getting off of the sidelines. And I think that something that's hard that we have to accept is that nobody else is going to fight this battle for your child. I'm fighting for my students and I'm fighting for my own child, but I can't fight for every single child out there. We need every single person to be involved in whatever way makes them comfortable. So for some people, that's just writing an email. For some people, it's attending a school board meeting. For some people, it's donating financially. Everybody knows what they're good at and what ways they could contribute, and they just need to find out what that is and do it. I've decided to go ahead and go back to my job in public education this year because I love it and I'm not ready to give up on these kids yet. I feel like public education is the right fit for a lot of kids for various reasons, the social aspect or the financial aspect. And there are so many wonderful things about public education, especially my school. I'm really fortunate to work where I work. And so I'm just not ready to throw in the towel yet. I know that a lot of people are. But I'm not a quitter, and I feel like we can be better from this. We can move on from this and be even better than we were before. And so I want to be one of the people to help get us there. As we approach this new school year, the parents just need to realize that the fight is not over and that it's an ongoing conversation. Even though a lot of districts have kind of like drawn out their plan, they said this is the way it's going to be, deal with it. You have to question them on it, because I've started doing that. Like I sent a very clear email and I said, what is the consequence if my daughter doesn't wear a mask? And what is the consequence if I don't wear a mask? And they don't know. Nobody has even gotten back to me, which they respond to all of my communication. So that's how I know that they have no clue. And so you have to be willing to do your research and figure out where you can kind of test the limits. California Ed Code is very clear that they cannot send your child home, suspend them, expel them, anything, especially K through 3rd grade. And so you can send your child to school maskless confidently, and as long as they are politely declining, there really is nothing a public school can do. Privates are a different case because they have a different set of rules, but especially for public school, if you decline, I have not found any consequence that they can give you. And so I think parents need to understand that, is that yes, they've made this plan, they've drawn the lines in the sand, but they really can't follow through with a lot of it. I know one thing they told us is that you would be pushed into our virtual program if you decline wearing a mask. Well, I looked that up and they can't do that. It's public school. They can offer for you to switch over to the virtual program, but they cannot force your child into any program. That's the beauty of public school. So parents just need to feel like they need to do their research, read the California Ed Code, and go into that first day of school confident that their child doesn't need to wear a mask and they will be okay. Yeah. So when you're listening to the board meetings, I always take notes because I want their exact wording written down, because they're saying it auditorily, but we want it in writing. So I always write down what they say, and you have to pay attention to their wording. Like when they said that your child would be put to the virtual program, their wording was that your child would be offered to be put into the virtual program. Those words are so key, because I think a lot of people hear that like, oh, my child's gonna get shoved into the virtual program, and they shut down. But what was said is that they were offered. So that means that you as a parent have every right to decline. Your child will be offered a mask. That doesn't mean they cannot legally force the mask on your child. I am not allowed to touch a child, technically, and I cannot force a mask on your child. So if your child declines politely, no thank you, my mom doesn't want me to wear a mask, then I have to end it there. There's nothing that I can do. So wording is so important. You have to stop, remove your emotions, and listen to what exactly they're saying. And that's gonna show you where the door is to go around it without being defiant. I feel like Let Them Breathe is awesome for that, because on our website under the library tab, that's where I've learned a lot. That's where I learned about the California Ed Code and a bunch of other things. So if you go in there, especially in our resolution, down at the bottom, we have a bunch of really good studies and resources that's going to give you the fuel for why it's safe for our kids to take off their mask. And so you just need to it takes time. I do it after my kids go to bed at night. You just need to take the time to sit down and read some of those studies, and that way you can feel confident, because I feel like sometimes we don't have the facts to back up our arguments, and so we go into these arguments and then it becomes your emotions, and your emotions aren't going to get you anywhere. So you have to read and feel confident in your facts so that you can back up your arguments. Well, I feel like the biggest thing has been a lack of communication, because I know I have to dig so deep to get any answers from my school board, and I'm fortunate that I know a lot of people in the district, and so I can reach out to the right people and get some answers. But I just think about like the average parent. They have no clue, and they've been locked out of our campus for over a year. So they truly have no idea what's happening in their child's classroom except for what their child will say at home. And they don't know what decisions the school board is making, because you have to dig so hard to get any answers. And so I feel like the first step is just educating parents and getting them involved in the communication. I know that this year was the first year that I started watching every single school board meeting from start to finish. And they make it so easy now because it's all on Zoom. And that I have learned so much, and that way I'm educated and I know what battles I want to fight to make our learning environments better for our kids. Let Them Breathe has decided to sue the state of California and Governor Newsom to try to get mask choice for our kids. And we're having a big fundraiser, a GoFundMe, so that we can raise money for the legal funds, because I'm sure everybody knows that legal battles are not cheap. And we have a lot in our lawsuit to talk about the masking, but also the quarantining and some of the other measures that they've imposed upon our kids. And so when, not if, when the lawsuit is successful, then it will impact all kids across the state of California and allow them to have the choice to do what's best for their kids. Our legal team was the same legal team that fought to have schools reopened last fall, and they were successful. And they're amazing. I've talked to them numerous times, and they know their stuff, and they're ready to do this battle again. And we were fortunate enough that we got assigned to the same judge that ruled in our favor for that school reopening lawsuit. So I'm super optimistic that we're going to be successful. One thing that I want parents to know is, as a teacher, one thing that I work with, especially in first grade, is getting kids IEPs. So that's individualized educational plan. So that's when kids need special education services. And when you're approaching an IEP, especially in first grade, if the parents are not on board, it ends there. If in any step of the IEP, the parent says, you know what, I don't want this for my child, I'm done, it ends there. There is nothing the school can do to impose special education services upon a kid. They could take them to court, but no district is going to do that. So my question is, if you can, as a parent, end all decisions in public school for your child, like for something like special education services, then why can't you make the decision for something as small as a mask? I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that you as a parent have rights to determine all aspects of your child's education, but you cannot decide if your child is going to wear a mask or not. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you have the power as a parent in one area, then you should have the power as a parent in every area. First of all, distancing with first graders is a joke. First graders are the most handsy, touchy little people. They want to hug on everybody. They want to jump on everybody. Like, they are high energy. So that's not a reality. That's super cute to put on paper, but I don't care how firm you are. It's not happening. Your kid is all over every other kid, and that's just what kids do. But the masks, to me, are such a big deal, because first graders are still trying to figure out the world. They are totally clueless little humans, and we are shaping them. That is my job. And so they are constantly searching your face to try to figure out your response to things. Like, I know my daughter, and this is what's gonna tip me over the edge. My daughter came home from preschool and she had made such a good choice. And I asked her, I was like, oh, did that make your teacher really happy? Like, she complimented her teacher on something. And I was like, oh, that probably made your teacher so happy. And she said, I don't know, because I couldn't see her face. So what kind of feedback did my daughter just get there? She made this amazing, heartfelt comment to her teacher, and then she had no idea how her teacher felt about it. That's not okay. Sure, short term, that's fine. Kids are resilient, but we're going on 1.5 years of this. And my students, I know the last day of school was so powerful for me because we were allowed to take our masks off outside. So we spent the day outside. And I will be honest with you, I didn't recognize my students because I had only seen half of their face all year, which that's a scary thought too. Like, I would not have recognized them outside of the school. And another thing, like, I didn't know what their parents looked like either because their parents had always worn a mask. How scary is that I wouldn't be able to recognize my students and their parents outside of the school because you don't realize how much your mouth identifies you. So there was that. Another thing was I had kids and we were outside and I had this little boy come up to me and he said, can we take a selfie together because we're allowed to smile now? And then I take the picture with him and I look around and half my class has lined up behind him to take a picture with me. And it was just, I started crying because I couldn't believe that that's where we were at because we're allowed to smile. It just, parents don't, these adults making the decisions, they don't think about how much, like, kids are so literal. So you cover up their smile and they take that as, I'm not supposed to smile. And it takes all of the joy out of a classroom. The kids are super somber all the time. There was so much less laughter. They were so much more quiet. And they get frustrated with each other because they can't hear each other because we know to speak up if we have a mask on, but they don't. And so they're super muffled and they get tired of asking each other to repeat stuff. And so they just kind of, by the end of the year, they gave up and they were really quiet and their relationships with each other suffered. Normally, I pride myself that my classroom, I say that we are a family, and by the end of the year, they truly feel like a family. And I have this big talk with my class about how they leave my doors, but they're still always going to be my family and they're always going to be my kids. And if they ever need anything, they can always come back to me. And I'll be honest, I didn't have that conversation with my class this year for the first time ever. And it was just because we didn't have the connections. They were not as connected to me, I wasn't as connected to them, and they weren't as connected to each other because of everything we had been through that year. And I don't want to do that again. And that's why I've been getting a lot more emotional because after doing that for a whole year, I was like, okay, we're better, we're stronger, let's move on. And now hearing that I have to do that again, I can't do it. That's not what I went into teaching for, and I never want to ever do that again. I think that all of this has opened our eyes to the fact that parents have to get involved in their child's education. Even over the last 9 years of teaching, I've noticed this decline. Parents want teachers to do all of the raising of their child for them so that they can just be happy, fun time parent. And so what we're seeing is these kids come into my classroom and they don't have like a solid foundation. They don't have a solid set of values. And so they're relying on their peers and the little influence that I can have on them, instead of coming to me with like a solid, this is what my family believes, this is what we do. And so that's a really scary place to be because our kids are way too impressionable. And so parents have to, it's never too late to step up. Parents have to step in, they have to be super involved, and they also have to be really clear with their kids about what their family's values are. Because by the time your kid sets foot in that classroom, they should know my family believes A, B, C, and D, and I'm not budging from that. And I think that that would make such a difference because kids are learning from each other instead of from adults, and that's really not how it should be. Our job as an adult is to raise our kids to be good little people. And I think a lot of people are relying on everybody else around them to do that for them. And that's a really dangerous place to be. I feel like so many times it's so easy to shut the door on a conversation. And it's so easy when people are getting defensive or angry to just say, okay, I'm done. But I feel like if they're willing, then you just have to keep checking in. Like, I know a lot of people have shut me out of their life from what I've said and what I'm doing, and I'm okay with that. But it makes me sad that they're no longer going to hear the conversation from the other side. I do have a handful of people that are continuing to have that conversation, and it's awesome because we just check in with each other and say like, hey, how are you feeling about this new guidance? And they'll even say like, I think it's ridiculous, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it because that's what they're saying to do. And so I just always challenge them and question, but you just have to know your limits. You have to know when somebody is hitting that shutdown mode, and you have to stop and say, you know what, I love you, I care about you, we're done with this conversation, we'll talk about it again another time. And that's a really hard balance to find, and that's been something, I did not start out that way. A year ago, I was the person, I would yell and get angry and then shut down and I'm done with you. And I just realized that that wasn't getting anywhere, and I didn't want to lose the people that matter the most to me. And so you just have to find that balance, and you have to know when you've hit that point and end it right there.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.